Today we're going to be talking about our software product that we're building, but first you should look at our cat. Just look at him. Look at this cat. Look at him. Do you have a good way to start talking about this product?
Well, first of all, what is it?
So, we built a software product for our CRO agency.
Yeah, and there's two layers to what it is. There's what it does now, which is it's focused on test analysis, and there's the broader mission, which is basically enabling CRO and experimentation teams to get way more value out of their BigQuery GA4 setup.
And I think we should also start this video by saying that this is not going to be a demo or a sales pitch. It is just literally us talking through the backstory and the reasoning why we decided to build it and what have been the challenges with it so far, the feedback that we've gotten. What is the purpose? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, that's kind of a long story, but luckily
Let's
we
start
have
from
time.
the beginning.
This goes all the way back years ago to Universal Analytics. So before GA4 came out, or before everyone was forced to start using GA4. So back then it was actually pretty easy to analyze A/B tests in Google Analytics, especially if you were using like Google Optimize, then it kind of just automatically went into its own report. But even if you're just using any random testing tool, it's pretty easy to set up the integration, to push exposure events into GA, and then to create segments where you could look at basically any report if you wanted to and separate it by control and variant for the experiment that you're looking at. And, just looking at specific metrics like you'd have in a testing tool, that's one thing. We can get into that a little bit later too, but you could look at any report in GA. You could look at just engagement metrics or whatever. You could slice and dice it however you wanted. And there still was this issue where user counts and conversion counts and sessions and stuff, like they were actually estimated in Universal Analytics, but there was a workaround for that. You could switch off the toggle at the property settings, do your experiment analysis, and then switch it back on if you want. So you could get around that pretty easily. And I think that was actually like a pretty common thing that people did for analyzing experiments. Just kind of look at the testing tool and then also see what's going on in GA, because there's just so much more going on in there.
I'm not super sure about that, if most people did it, but that's how we did it, I guess.
Yeah.
Or
Totally.
other bigger agencies taught their people to do it. But I mean, all that is to say that this was all like years ago, years and
Yeah.
years ago now. And then Google did this thing, which we all know, and deleted everything that everybody had worked hard for to learn.
Mm-hmm. Forced everyone onto GA4, which was a very different product. And there's basically two or three things. There's three reasons that test analysis in GA4 is a completely different story than it was in Universal Analytics. One, the estimated user count thing, you can't turn that off anymore. So that's always applied in GA4, whether you're using it in the interface or in the API or whatever. So that means that you're not actually seeing the true numbers for users and conversions. And then if you do statistical tests on that, it means that you could actually make the wrong decision on experiments. So roughly 30% of the time, depending on your sample size and a whole bunch of stuff. But it's big enough of an issue that basically you just shouldn't do experiment analysis in GA4.
Yeah, and I guess our main question through this, maybe not the main question, but one of the questions in our product discovery has been how many people still try to use external tools besides their testing tool to do analysis at all. Because my feeling is that most people, not like the very, very pro level people, but like most people doing A/B testing, they are still mostly relying on the testing tool dashboard and that analytics to, and then maybe they like copy paste the numbers to an external calculator or something like that. But I think that's kind of generally where the industry is at, or practitioners.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go that route, and then it's pretty limiting. I think like the main reason that I prefer not to do that is because you have to set up a completely different analytics setup, basically. Like people invest all this money to set up their regular analytics with a whole bunch of different events and metrics and stuff. And then you have to duplicate all that in the testing tool. And then you have to maintain it too, because like we all know how often tracking setups will just break because, changes get pushed to the website and they're like, oh, suddenly we're not tracking this thing anymore, so we need to fix it. So now you need to fix it in two places if you also need to do it in the testing tool. So it's kind of like one of the motivations. And then there's other stuff too where, say you're an agency or a consultant and you have 10 different clients and they're all using different testing tools, then you have to log into 10 different interfaces and you're doing things differently for every client. Whereas if you were pushing things first to GA4 and then to BigQuery, which we'll get into, you can have just a unified process for all your clients. And then it also doesn't matter if a client or if you're in-house at a brand, if you switch testing tools, you're not going to have to suddenly learn a whole new interface and a new way of calculating statistics and all this kind of stuff. So consistency is valuable.
And the other thing is that a lot of the testing tools, they don't really reveal how things work under the hood at all.
Yeah.
So as a user, you just kind of have to blindly trust them that they are calculating things correctly and whatever. And that's part of the reason why people, I guess, use external calculators to get another perspective on it or to sanity check the numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like cases that we know of where big testing tools will use other people's test data to come up with the conclusion for your tests and crazy things like that, which you don't really want in your experimentation program. So this was part of the reason of building this tool, our tool, to work with raw numbers only.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so there's all of those reasons that you might just copy and paste the data into a different tool, or push the data into GA4. And then on the GA4 side of things, there's still, even aside from the user count estimation thing, like GA4 is just really clunky and difficult to use. Like it's not intuitive at all.
Yeah, literally, like everybody complains about it. Even the
Yeah.
people that are using it on the daily basis still feel like they don't really get it or it's not good enough.
Yeah, even people that really support GA4, they'll still default to saying it's not really a good reporting interface. It's good for data collection and processing and stuff like that, but like the reporting side of things there's not many people that think that it's good.
So I guess the next part of this big puzzle or the story is that once GA4 was launched, BigQuery became available to everybody as well, right?
Yeah.
Like before you had to pay for it, but then once they changed their data models and their analytics platform, everybody got access to the BigQuery data warehouse, which means that you can basically get raw numbers from whatever you sent there.
Yeah, it used to be just a GA360 thing. So now it's available on free GA4, and BigQuery itself has a really generous free tier that it's pretty rare to go over that. It's like a terabyte of processing and stuff. So it's, even if you do surpass the free tier and you have to start paying, it's going to be maybe like $10 a month or something, even for pretty high volume websites. So we've dealt with websites that have millions of visitors per month. And I think the highest bill I've ever seen is like $40 for a month of processing a lot of data. So yeah, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse. The GA4, it's so much more limiting and constrained and annoying, but then also they gave you free BigQuery export. So it opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, but also introduces a lot of new problems where people basically have to be proficient now in SQL to get anything meaningful out of the data warehouse.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most intimidating part, I would say, for most marketers to work with a data warehouse, because even the word data warehouse project or whatever, it's just like this almost unattainable thing. And it sounds like you need all these data analysts to set this up and data scientists and whatever, when in reality, it's actually quite simple. And that's a big part of our tool, Katsed, is that it fetches your experiment data without you having to learn anything about SQL.
Because that's how we were doing it before.
Yeah.
And like we felt the pain of having to put together these SQL queries for every new experiment. And for the most part, the query doesn't change a lot. You can kind of copy and paste the query from your last experiment, and then you have to change the metrics or change the experiment IDs. If you're just analyzing the same metrics for every test and all you have to do is just switch in the experiment IDs, it's not too bad. But you still have to go and do that, and you have to dig through, like there might be several different sections in the query where you have to make sure to update the experiment IDs. There's not going to be any warning that you did it wrong. It's just that the data will be wrong and you have no idea that it is wrong or why it's wrong or anything like that. So yeah, we were using the OWASP BI connector. It's pretty good. You can set up a query, fetch the data from BigQuery, and pull it into Google Sheets. And we were rolling with that for, I don't know, probably like a year or longer, and just making new queries, and then pull the data into one sheet, and then you kind of do a whole bunch of translation to get it formatted nicely into a different sheet, and then apply the stats calculations and stuff like that. So it was working anyway. It was just kind of tedious.
Currently, one of the main arguments or questions that people have is, why do I need this tool? Why can't I just have AI write my queries for me? And to me, it's one of those things where if you ask that question, it means that you haven't tried it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, like AI is pretty good at putting together queries, but you need to tell it exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, and
And
also still, if you are trying to rely on it without having any true SQL skills yourself,
yeah,
you can't QA or make sure that any of this is actually correct.
yep. Yeah, and it's another example of the data that you're getting will look fine, but it might be wrong, but you just don't know.
Plus, you still would have to do it separately for every test metric.
Yeah.
The purpose of our tool is you can easily fetch whatever metric data you want, and it shows it all to you in a neat dashboard without you having to mess around in Looker or build anything extra for it.
Yeah, totally. If you were to just make your own queries or use AI to do it, then eventually probably what you would do is you would save little pieces of queries that would be like, okay, for a test when we're looking at lead form submitted metric, I need to paste in this little bit of code because that will fetch that particular event with the right parameters or whatever it might be. So that's what happens behind the scenes with Katsed, except it's just a click. You set up the metric once, and then at the test level, you'll be like, I want to look at this metric. So you click it, and then behind the scenes, it inserts the right code into the query and just takes care of all that stuff for you. Basically goes from being super tedious and you could potentially mess it up to the query is robust and it's tested and it's going to be the right query. And all you have to do is just click one thing in order to choose the metric or metrics for a test.
How long have we been working on this thing now? It's been close to a year already, or not yet?
I think more than a year because we had an initial version of it that we were only using internally, and it didn't have a very nice user interface or anything. It was super basic, but just kind of did the job. It did the same sort of stuff that we were describing. And then I think probably about a year ago, we started polishing it up to try to turn it into something that other people could use as well. So that actually has like proper user experience and interfaces and stuff like that. And it handles different users, and things like scanning for new experiments is really polished now. Before, I would know the experiment ID that I was looking for, so I'd still just insert that. But now it's one click, it will find all the experiments in your data set from multiple different A/B testing tools as well. We're building out more integrations all the time. And also, if you're trying to use it and we don't have your integration, we can set that up pretty quickly if you're using a testing tool that we haven't set up yet. So yeah, probably about a year of working on a proper app that does all this stuff rather than the hokey internal version we were using.
And it's one of those things where by profession we are CROs, strategists,
Mm.
analysts, agency people. I guess we have tried to build little web tools in the past, like calculators and CRO related templates and things like that, but this is our first crack at real SaaS type of product.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a weird time to do it or talk about it because so many people are on the AI gold rush and vibe coding and whatever. So I'm
Mm.
always afraid that people will see us as we're doing like some kind of hacky vibe coding product as well, which like
Uh,
this is not that at all. This is like full on custom development. You have been the main engineer behind it. You have real developer experience and skills.
yeah.
You're not just like writing GPT prompts of like, hey, code me this tool up, please, right?
Yeah,
I just
definitely.
want to make that super clear.
It's a properly engineered piece of software that has proper security and everything. You might be able to vibe code something sort of superficially similar to this. It would take a long time though. Like it's definitely a lot more complex than you would think in order to have a proper query builder that handles all these different cases of like what different metrics can look like and even just sorting out all the logic of what data to fetch for an experiment where you want users and conversions, but conversions you don't want event counts because what if there's multiple ones per user? So if you're looking for conversions, it's actually users who converted. And you want to make sure that they converted after their first experience impression. And there's like a whole bunch of little kind of nuances just to get the right data out of a query. So I guarantee you it would take months of effort just to get that part right. And then if you also want to figure out all the other kind of stuff to build it into a SaaS tool, it takes a lot of work to have something that actually runs properly and reliably and has proper query optimization so you're not just using up your quota and costing your customers lots of money on the BigQuery side of things. So there's a lot that has gone into it.
Still, this is our first real try, as I said, at a SaaS product. So obviously, there's a massive learning curve for us as well.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to get people to use it, and we have gathered some feedback, which has been great. But it's still one of those things where you can read all the books and the theory on how to build and market a software product, but the reality is quite different of getting anybody
Mm-hmm.
to care about it. And also just learning how much effort people perceive it to be to set up even just a BigQuery account. Like what I was saying earlier, the
Yeah.
data warehouse project is still perceived as like this massive undertaking, which to be fair, in enterprise level organizations, you have to get permissions and the right
Mm-hmm.
people involved to share data with a third party tool or an agency or whatever. But still, it's a couple of clicks to set up. But
Yeah.
that has been, I think, one of our biggest learnings is we have had so much interest in this tool of people signing up for it,
Mm-hmm.
but then getting people through those first steps of actually connecting the tools and understanding how they connect together is still kind of a challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely surprising to me because anytime we've set up like from scratch the BigQuery GA4 export for a client, it's the longest amount of time it takes is just getting the right permissions for things. But anytime when they just gave us admin access or we created the account for them, it took maybe 10 minutes to set everything up. And then you have to wait for some time, I think 24 to 48 hours for the data to start flowing into BigQuery. But it's really easy. And I'm always so surprised when people are posting about as if it's this big, difficult project or that you need specialists to do it or that it costs a lot of money or something because it's literally a few minutes of your time and then it's there. Then at least you have the historical data flowing in, even if you don't do anything with it right away. There's really not much of a downside. And then, yeah, the other side of it is, like you said, people getting Katsed connected to their BigQuery setup. And also, to be fair, the setup we had initially didn't really provide much guidance. It was kind of like enter the details for the BigQuery configuration, click the button to verify the connection, and it would just say, no, that didn't work. And it would give you basically the error directly from BigQuery, which is super cryptic, confusing kind of stuff. But we fixed that. So it's way easier now. It'll do it step by step. And if anything fails, it'll tell you exactly what the issue is. If it's that the service account doesn't have the right permissions, or if you don't have the right data set, or there just isn't any data in there, it'll point you in the right direction.
Even though it's been a challenge to guide people through the initial process, we have gotten a decent amount of feedback and implemented those changes pretty quickly, which has been pretty cool, going through that actual process of talking to people directly of what they even find valuable about this tool and what they would want to see in it. Since we're so small and I guess agile, it's easy to make those changes pretty quickly and learn from it. Also, from the analysis part, jumping back to one of our previous topics, I want more people to realize how much more powerful the A/B testing analysis process could be, because I think that it is such a challenge for most companies. Even the really mature experimentation programs, they still struggle with the testing analysis part.
Yeah.
And with this tool, you can look at any test and any metric that you have already set up in GA4 retroactively as well, once your test has stopped. I'm not sure if any of the testing tools even do that. Like,
no, it would all
not
have to
that I
be,
know of.
It'd all have to be set up at the beginning before you start the test.
Yeah, let's say you stop a test and then afterwards you realize we should have tested this metric as well. Like, you can't, you basically have to relaunch that test, right?
Yep.
But with our tool, it's you just go in and you choose whatever metric you like and can slice and dice the data however you want.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty common too. There's definitely something to be said for planning out your decision criteria for a test in advance. But in reality, you're always going to just notice things that make you want to dig deeper in a test. And that doesn't mean, oh, we didn't get significance, so let's keep slicing the data until we get significance in order to make a decision, because obviously that's not good practice. But you'll see like a movement in one metric and then another one goes down, and then you'll realize, okay, but what about this other metric? How did this experiment affect this other thing further down the stream? And it's hard to think through all those possible combinations or considerations before you start the test. Like, sometimes you just see the data and that kind of causes you to look in a different direction or want to explore further. So with Katsed, you can just do that. Anything can be applied retroactively. And like, I know that kind of sounds like we're pitching it or we're trying to talk up the features, but we have built it this way because we wanted it to be that way. This comes from our own experience.
Yeah, and I guess the point of this is also we actually built it for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And we are using it for our agency clients. And even if nobody else ever wants to use it or cares about it, it doesn't really matter because it has already paid off immensely for our own clients. Like, we've saved them so much money with, like, even the example that you posted the other day about our client was using VWO and they needed to upgrade, and the upgrade was like 10K or something to look at the metrics that we needed to look at. And just with our tool, we obviously didn't have to do anything. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it like literally would have been over 10,000 for them to just upgrade, like on top of what they were already paying for their current tier. And yeah, we just added a feature to Katsed that means that they don't have to do that anymore. They can keep going with the current tier and we can get the data that we need and everybody's happy.
The other thing I wanted to touch on or ask you about is a couple of people that I've seen talking about evaluating testing tools, and especially in terms of analysis and whatever. So in the market, there's been this push towards warehouse natives testing tools as well.
Actually, they use something like BigQuery or something similar to that.
Right, okay.
So it's more like the testing tool kind of like works within, usually these are enterprise level tools, but they'll work within the company's existing data warehouse stack instead of storing the results themselves. And I think that's a good thing, but these are very advanced tools, and to use them at scale, usually it's pretty expensive, or in some cases there's open source ones where you need a team of developers to actually put them into practice. By comparison, Katsed can sort of be thought of as like a warehouse native experiment analysis tool that will work with any A/B testing tool. You can use it with paid tools. There's even some free options these days. There's people that are putting out GTM based A/B testing solutions, or there's one called Conversion Workers, which isn't free anymore, but it's kind of like another innovative way to approach A/B testing where it uses the edge to serve the experiment variants instead of a snippet on the website that does it. Basically anything, as long as you have some way of targeting the tests and splitting the traffic and serving the variant, as long as you're pushing events into GA4, then we can pick that up, and Katsed can handle the reporting side of that.
Maybe we should also talk about like, what kind of stats do we use? That's a common question that power users have usually.
The quick answer is just standard frequentist statistics.
Well, you know, many people want Bayesian.
Yeah, we actually had like a big agency who wants to start using Katsed, and they want us to add Bayesian. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to, but I might do it anyway. Maybe with just some like warnings about like why it's not a good idea.
I personally don't have a super strong opinion about that, but I know that you as the main engineer of the product do, but I think at this point it's give the people what they want.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle of trying to decide how opinionated the tool itself should be. How much should it reflect my sometimes fairly strongly held beliefs about how certain things should be?
Yeah, it's a topic that is coming up a lot recently. Even the video series that I did with Romil for Experiment Nation, where we answer questions from the CRO community, there's a lot of questions about how much accountability should the tool have for different outcomes and how many warnings should there be about different types of errors versus how much should it be on the practitioner.
I think the answer to that is probably allow different functionality, but educate along the way. Like with the frequentist Bayesian, there's a lot of people that just really like to use Bayesian stats, and I think in a lot of cases they shouldn't be, but it's also not up to me to decide that for them. But even just something as simple as like we had one person requested that when you're creating a metric, that it would automatically name the metric based on the GA4 event. And from my perspective, that's the wrong way to go about it, because the name of a metric should be English. It should be plain English that anybody can understand what it means, not some kind of like, you know, event underscore whatever snake case thing that's an actual technical event name. It should be one layer abstracted from that, because a metric might be an event with a bunch of parameters, and there's lots of reasons that I think that. So I kind of like just don't want to do that because I don't want to encourage people to be thinking about metrics the wrong way.
So who is this tool for?
I think the people that would benefit the most from it are CRO and experimentation agencies. And why do I say CRO and experimentation separately? Because some people think they're the same thing. I mean, like optimizing websites and also doing product experimentation. I think it fits both use cases really well, because with product experimentation, there's a lot more metrics. On websites, it's typically some type of conversion and maybe some kind of micro conversion along the way, or a couple things. Maybe it's add to carts and checkout starts and actual purchases or something. But with product analytics, there's a lot more. You might be looking at 10 to 20 metrics for any particular test. So I think both of those, it works pretty well. And specifically agencies or consultants, if you have lots of clients, then the benefit of having the exact same process for test analysis for all of them, that translates directly into dollars. That's saving you time every week. And also just other than the time savings, just being able to be comparing apples to apples all the time. You don't have to be trying to think about, oh, this time I'm looking at this testing tool and this is how their stats work, and therefore I need to explain it in this way to the client. Just being able to keep your own sanity and just be like, okay, we're applying the same stats regardless of testing tool or client or whatever, so you can have kind of like more standardized processes. Your training becomes easier for new hires and stuff like that. And is there a size where it really makes sense? I don't know, really sophisticated teams that have their own developers and they're really comfortable writing queries and building dashboards and stuff, then maybe you don't need a tool like this, I would say. And then on the brand side, I think it could still be pretty useful in that case where you don't already have a data science team or even one data scientist. I think it's a lot better for that middle zone where you don't really want to just rely on a particular testing tool dashboard and you want a little bit more functionality out of it, but you don't want to spend 6 figures to hire a data scientist quite yet, and also the engineering support that a data scientist needs.
Yeah,
So you agree?
I agree. The other relevant question people might have is there AI in it?
Mm, yeah, not yet. There's actually no AI because there hasn't been a need for it. This happens with a lot of AI use cases. I've even tried a few times to think like, what's a good application for AI, and then come up with an idea. And then once I sort through it all, there ends up not being a need for AI. The AI is more helpful in building it, but there's not that many cases for something like this where it makes sense to get an LLM to generate stuff. The part where we could possibly play with it is interpreting experiment results, but that's also kind of a double-edged sword because you don't want AI hallucinations to be factoring into important business decisions.
I mean, we don't know which way this technology is going to go, right? Like
Yeah.
it will evolve, and maybe at some point there will become like a natural point where it does make sense to add it for specific tasks. But
Yeah.
as of right now, there hasn't been. We just don't want to also get bucketed in with all the new SaaS tools whose main value prop is that it has AI in it. Because it doesn't really
Yeah.
mean anything.
Yeah, we're definitely not opposed to it, but we would just bring it in thoughtfully and not try to replace a human in critical parts of the process. Try to replace tedious parts of the process, I think would be the first layer. But yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Where do you see it going overall? It would be nice to crack the whole reporting side of things because I know that that's a massive pain for most companies. That's something we've been discussing that we want to add at some point, but
Yeah, we actually didn't have graphs before, so we've just launched that. So now there's a couple of different types of graphs or charts where you can look at your test results instead of just the numbers. And then we also have export functionality now. So you can download CSV or copy as JSON. There's a few options there. We've had people request allowing AI to access the tool so that the AI could either trigger fetching experiment results and then exporting them and then do whatever you want with it. So that will probably do that fairly soon. But other than the reporting, I think the logical kind of next steps are moving from just test analysis to test planning as well. That's coming up pretty soon on the roadmap. Because we've even built, like, we have the qualitative test planning calculator. And
which is free on our website, by the way.
yeah, it's free and it takes a lot of the guesswork out of just planning tests. If you don't quite understand all the different parameters like p-value and MDE and all that, it'll just suggest reasonable defaults for you. But even with that, you still have to enter the traffic and conversion numbers. But if we were to migrate that within Katsed, it already has access to your traffic and conversion numbers. So it's one more copy and pasting step out of it. And then that would also be a really good way to tell you on the analysis side whether a test is finished yet or not. Because some tools try to do this and it'll just kind of be based on is it significant or not, or which is a really bad way to do it. And the only correct way to do it is to say, has this test met your stopping criteria from your test plan yet? So if the test plan lives within Katsed, then we can tell them that.
Obviously, in a process like building a custom made software, there's so much more that we could say about the process and what we've learned and how we are going about like product discovery and stuff. Maybe that's something we want to talk more about in the future because on our agency side, we work with a lot of product teams as well doing research. So it's been interesting to shift that mindset towards our own product.
Yeah.
And we want to get better at it too. But yeah, this is like kind of the gist of what we wanted to talk through in this episode.
Yeah.
And there really isn't any specific call to action in this video. If this sounds like something you could find useful, you can reach out to us and we can help you set it up. It's still completely free. We haven't monetized it as of right now of filming this video.
Yeah, we will at some point, but at the
Hopefully.
moment we really just value like the feedback. If we can get more people in there using it and letting us know how to improve it, then that's awesome.
Yeah, and lots of plans in the future of maybe collaborating with some of the bigger software companies on the market. Can't say much about it yet, but yeah, we have plans for this thing. We have a vision, but also trying to stay humble about it, collect feedback, and not do the classic founder mistake where you just build it for yourself and not ever interview anybody and understand what other people need from it.
Yeah, exactly. We're fortunate that we are building it for ourselves. Like
Yeah,
that
like we
helps a
are
lot.
our own users for sure
Yeah.
from the agency side, but would be super interesting to talk to more people who do similar things. So if that's you, reach out to us. And if you have any questions, can comment, DM us, whatever, email us,
We're
send,
around.
send pictures. Closing statement.
Closing statement. It's fun building something, and I hope other people find it valuable.
Okay. See you next time. Bye.